Now, what's interesting about this whole thing is we've seen this before. If you followed the history of a lot of games that were great, that were fantastic in so many different ways, we've seen this play out before. Okay, so we're going to talk about it. All right. In this video, we're going to talk about what Sega had to say about Sonic Superstar sales. And we're starting right now. All right, let's talk about it. So Sonic Superstars sales impacted by Mario, Sega suggests. So we're going to scroll down. We're going to talk about this a little bit. This is on Eurogamer's website. Sega has admitted releasing Sonic Superstars at the same time as Super Mario Bros. Wonder and Marvel's Spider-Man 2 may have hindered sales, okay? And it says here, in a presentation of the company's recent financial quarterly report, sales of its mascot platformer were described as having a slightly weaker start than we had anticipated. Then in a newly released Q&A, following its recent financial report, President and Group CEO Haruki Satomi and Senior Executive Vice President and CFO Koichi Fukuzawa. Now, even with the names, just thumbs up, I did the names justice, okay? They were asked about the reason for the lower than expected sales so far, okay? So, and over here it says, we believe that the impact of other companies' major title released at the same time is significant, but we plan to expand a promotion towards the holiday season. That's very interesting, especially in overseas market. That was the response, okay? Now, both Metacritic score and user score was higher than Sonic Frontiers, and we would like to continue to sell firmly, okay? So they're not going to give up on this title. I believe this is the first 2D title back in a very long time. So to see it, it is a beautiful game, but we'll talk about why this is an ongoing challenge, and it shouldn't be a challenge at all, okay? So Sonic Superstars released on 17th of October, just ahead of Super Mario Bros. Wonder and Marvel's Spider-Man 2 on October 20th, okay? Now, what's interesting about this whole thing is we've seen this before. If you followed the history of a lot of games that were great, that were fantastic in so many different ways, we've seen this play out before, okay? So we're going to talk about it, all right? So we see here Nintendo Switch exclusive sold over 4.3 million copies worldwide, making it the fastest selling Super Mario related game. Insomniac's PS5 exclusive, meanwhile, sold over 5 million. And Sega hasn't released specific numbers, and why should they, right? When it comes to things like this, if the numbers that you would like to see, you projected that it was going to make, doesn't necessarily show up on paper, you find another way to mention that the thing is doing well without giving the numbers that people may want to see, right? So for example, with the recent Call of Duty game, I don't think we've seen the sales numbers for Call of Duty yet. Maybe it exists and I just didn't see it at the time of recording this video. But what they did release though is an engagement report of how much engagement they received from the recent Call of Duty game that has dropped. They have not released, any sales. And even when you go back to just thinking out loud here, when you go back to the subscription stuff with Xbox, at some point they stopped mentioning console sales and they just started mentioning subscription sales, right? So it depends on what the company is focused on, because if they say the thing is doing bad, you may not necessarily buy it, right? So why would they release the specific numbers for the platform if that's going to make it worse for them in terms of sales, right? So when you look at over here, it says Sonic Superstars, though, did note the series as a whole sold over 1.66 billion units and downloads across all games. So rather than specifically talking about Sonic Superstars, they say, hey, we're going to mention this number because it's a bigger number, and we're going to make it across all these titles, and that just looks nicer from a PR standpoint, right? So next thing that we have here, it says Sonic and Mario has a long rivalry, but this particular battle was surely won by Nintendo, though Sega plans to spend 90% of Sonic Superstars marketing costs during the holiday season. As we read earlier at the top of the article, they're going to focus on a particular market for that? Where have we seen this before? We definitely need to talk about that. Okay, so I want you to look at this here, okay? So what we have here is the same situation that we keep seeing over and over in the industry, that they have wishes and hopes, okay, with certain things, but there's just certain things that we have to track with the data. As much as Sega wishes that it wants to do better than Mario, that is a big undertaking in a lot of ways, okay? So let's look at this for a second. Maybe EA learned from Titanfall 2 blunder. This was an article posted in 2018, and a couple of things that we want to see here, right? EA is moving the release date from its upcoming BioWare space shooter Anthem to early 2019, which is a smart decision according to the article, and one that gamers and BioWare fans should applaud, right? So now this was 2019, okay? Now I'm gonna scroll down here to this part where it says, not only will this give the game more development time, resulting in a more complete and polished product at launch, it means that it won't be awkwardly wedged between DICE's Battlefield game and Treyarch's Call of Duty release. Now those are, whether you like what's happening with Battlefield or not, okay, whether you like what's happening with Call of Duty or not, you know, it needs to take a year off or whatever you want to say about the title, it's still big titles every single year they release, okay? So now look at here, that's what happened to one of the best games in 2016. Now you would want to believe that they would learn that a few years later, right? But if you look at here, 2016, Titanfall 2, it found itself in a very interesting situation between two first-person shooter titles that are the biggest titles, whether you like it or not. They're still the biggest titles in the world, right? Battlefield and Call of Duty, all right? So now we see this here. So this is something that keeps repeating itself. Now we're not in 2016, obviously. We're not in 2019. We're in 2023, heading into 2024, and we're still seeing the same thing happen with these companies. Now, will they learn?